One of the things that I think is an important issue that kind of gets put aside is I know a lot of veterans in particular and a lot of people with some severe trauma that have had psychedelic therapy, and they've had to go to other countries to do it. They've done some of it illegally in America. But I know far too many guys who have had PTSD, who have had an incredible experience and been alleviated of all these.
And this helped them?
It helped them tremendously.
Okay. What is it? Is it like MDMA or is it? What
MDMA was what MAPS was using. They were running these studies, and they got close to FDA approval, but then now they're being sent back to say they have to do more studies. So the problem is, like, you can't really do double-blind, placebo-controlled studies on MDMA. Either you're on it or you're not on it. It's pretty obvious. You know?
Yeah, sugar pills don't have the same effect.
Yeah, it just doesn't. But the therapy for people that are suffering from severe PTSD has been incredibly beneficial. They've shown that with the MAPS studies, but they've also shown it with, like, anecdotally. I know a bunch of different guys that have gone down to Mexico and had psilocybin journeys and all these different things where they've encountered these experiences that have made them sort of rethink who they are, alleviated them of a lot of the stress and a lot of the trauma that they've experienced, and given them peace. And the concept of Schedule 1 is that there's no medical benefit. Right. And if these people are experiencing, first of all, cessation of smoking, people that have had issues with addiction, Ibogaine treatment's another one that they've found, which is not something that anyone would ever abuse recreationally. I've never done it, but apparently it's an excruciating experience. But the rate of curing addiction is tremendous from it. And these things have been denied, people have had denied access to it because of this scheduling issue. Like, there's we discussed it yesterday on the podcast, like the LD50 rate was like lethal dose at 50% is impossible to achieve with psilocybin, and yet it's still illegal. And that there's all these people that have reported
psilocybin's mushrooms, right?
Yes. Okay. And but you can synthesize it. It doesn't have to be.
I see.
But the scheduling of these things, in particular like marijuana. Like marijuana is legal on a state level with, I think, almost half the country now, if not more, but yet federally illegal. And if you go to the history of why it was federally illegal in the first place, it coincides with the what happened with prohibition of alcohol. Right after prohibition of alcohol, they turned their eyes to marijuana, and there was a lot of political influence by Harry Anslinger and William Randolph Hearst, and there's a lot of maneuvering, and that's where the Reefer Madness films came up and all this propaganda stuff. It was to make it illegal, essentially to make the textile, the hemp, illegal.
Interesting. Okay.
There's a long history to it. It's basically more about the commodity of hemp than it was really about the drug itself. In fact, the term marijuana was never used for cannabis, which has been used for thousands and thousands of years. The term marijuana was created by William Randolph Hearst and put in Hearst newspapers. It was originally, marijuana was a Mexican slang word for wild tobacco.
Really?
It had nothing. So they started writing these stories about blacks and Mexicans smoking this new drug, marijuana, and raping white women. And most of this
I had no idea this history.
It's so crazy. The story is so nuts, but it all came about because of an invention called the decorticator. And the decorticator is it's an invention that allows them to economically and effectively process hemp fiber without slave labor. So when the cotton gin came along, people stopped using hemp as much because it's much more difficult to work with, and they started using cotton for clothing. But before that, they'd use hemp, and this is non-psychoactive hemp. It makes a superior paper. It does. There's a bunch of uses for it, completely outside of the psychoactive aspect of it. William Randolph. There was the cover of, was it Popular Science magazine? Popular Mechanics magazine, hemp, the new billion-dollar crop. And it was all about this invention. So then the propaganda machine goes into full scale, and then they start. This was in the 1930s. Okay. So they start, here it is, the new billion-dollar crop, 1938. And this is because of this invention, the decorticator. So it solves a problem. You can see it there. Solves a problem more than 6,000 years old. Hemp, a crop that will not compete with other American products. Instead, it will displace imports of raw material and manufactured products produced by underpaid coolie and peasant labor and provide thousands of jobs for American workers throughout the land. So everybody was really high on hemp as a commodity because of this new machine that you could process hemp fiber with, where you can make much more superior paper, superior clothing. Like, it's like canvas. Literally, the Mona Lisa was painted on hemp. The first draft of the Declaration of Independence was written on hemp. They used to use it for paper back then. So then William Randolph Hearst, who owns Hearst Publication, and also owns all these paper mills and forests filled with trees. So they, to combat this industry, exactly. And so we're still trapped under this propaganda that was distributed in the 1930s by incredibly powerful people. And this is why it's illegal on the federal level. And even though you have medical marijuana that's been shown to help people with chemotherapy and wasting disease, help people that have appetite problems and people in chronic pain, it's still listed as a Schedule 1 drug federally, which to me is unconscionable. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay. So, like, first of all, we're not trying to be clear, because I'm speaking as a vice presidential candidate, we're not trying to throw people in jail for smoking weed. That's like very much something that we're not interested in doing. What is, I mean, the one thing that I have, like, my attitude on this stuff is kind of live and let live. Like, keep it in your home. I don't like smelling it when I take my kids to the park, right?
Yeah,
but keep
that's not good. Daddy, what's that skunk doing here?
Yeah, exactly. But, like, you know, keep it at home. I don't want to throw people in prison. That's not what we're trying to do.
I don't think you should be drunk at the park either, right?
Exactly, exactly. Same exact principle. The thing that I wonder about is if you know, I do, there's a part of me that worries a little bit about kids doing a lot of this stuff. And I wonder, you know, to your point about consent and the brain's development and all these things, I really worry about, do you have an increase in usage among minors? And so what I'd like to get is some sort of legal regime that, you know, again, is not like criminally prosecuting or prosecuting at all people for smoking a joint, but also where we can actually ensure that it's kept out of public spaces. That's kind of my attitude towards it. And I think that's the right approach. I mean, on the psychedelic thing, what would need to be done because I know, to be clear, I know absolutely nothing about this. So this is me, asking a question, not committing to some public policy. You have to be careful with this stuff, especially 6 days from an election. But I had never heard about, because I'm a veteran too. I spent 4 years in the United States Marine Corps, went to Iraq, went to Haiti once. And is there any like what is the pathway, I guess, or what do you think should happen for veterans accessing psychedelics?
Well, there's so many anecdotal stories about veterans experiencing relief that I think it should be available to them, especially veterans. I think that we put our veterans through...
But is it like an FDA thing? Is making it possible for them to get the therapy? Okay.
Yes, and it's also the way it's scheduled. It's...
Because it's Schedule 1, isn't it?
Yes.
But like if it had a medical use, presumably you would get it off of Schedule 1.
Yes.
So why aren't we... I'm just fascinated by this. This is the first time I've heard about this. Why aren't we testing whether... there is, fair point, you can't do a double-blind placebo-controlled study, but you can definitely still study whether this helps people or not. Why aren't we doing that, or are we doing that? I'm just not aware of it.
Well, we're definitely not doing it. I mean, there's been some research. John Hopkins did some research on psychedelics, and they found similar benefits. There's also dangers, like anything that has profound effects on the human mind. There's certain people that are very vulnerable, and those people should not be taking these things. There's people that have a hard time with regular reality. They're barely hanging on regularly.
Yeah.
But I think the people that are not should have access to that, because I believe in freedom, and I believe in the freedom to explore things that have great benefits. And I keep going back to veterans because I think we require an insane thing of them. We take regular people who live in civilized society, we send them over to Afghanistan and Iraq and have them engaged in the absolutely most brutal things that people do, which is war. They see their friends blown apart, they get shot, they see people die, they have to kill people, and then they come back here and then they're supposed to just acclimate. And there's no guidelines, there's no way to do it, there's no one can coach you through it. And a lot of these guys wind up killing themselves. And it's a very high amount. And Sean Ryan, have you done his show?
Yeah, love Sean Ryan.
Love Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan was talking about the experience that he had with him. Completely changed his life. He stopped drinking. He became a much more compassionate, sensitive person.
We talked about like foreign policy and veteran stuff, but we didn't talk about this. That's
the guy's a Navy SEAL. I mean, he's seen a lot of shit.
He's seen a lot of shit.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's just, that's the job. And you come back over here and you're supposed to just be normal, and there's no help. At least for those people.
Look, my attitude is we should help veterans get the mental health they need, mental health treatment they need, and be less screwed up by all this stuff. We should be doing whatever we can. I just don't understand why aren't we? Is this a pharma lobbying thing? Is this a bureaucratic screwed up thing? Because I'm always wondering, why are we not actually solving problems? And this is a problem I know nothing about. Sorry, I know a lot about veteran suicides and veteran mental health. This proposed solution, literally the first time.
Well, you could get real cynical as to what's the resistance. You could say the companies that make psychotropic drugs, SSRIs and the like, and companies that have a vested interest in continuing to sell these things would not want something that causes people to have a profound psychological change that doesn't require them to be on these things anymore. There could be an impact in that, but I think there's also a lot of ignorance.
Have you read this book, Bad Therapy?
No.
Okay, it's good.
I've heard it's good. Yeah, I've heard it though.
So the mental health thing in the United States is really, really worrisome because, when I talk about, obviously we have a big gun violence problem in the United States of America, and I talk about mental health because obviously that's a part of what's going on here. It's what they say is, well, every other country has mental health, meaning advocates of strict gun laws say every other country has mental health problems, but they don't have the same gun violence problem that we do. It's actually not totally true. If you look at like SSRI prescriptions, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, it's like Prozac, that category of mental health therapeutics, we take something like 6 times as much as our peer countries economically. So clearly there's something with mental health treatment in the United States that is very, very broken.
There's also a direct correlation between school shooters, mass shooters, and SSRIs.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like most of the people that have committed mass shootings, and not talking about gang shootings, but a bunch of them are on psychotropic drugs. And everybody wants to blame drugs.
Had no idea. Man,
oh, yeah.
that's crazy.
Google it because you can find out what the numbers. I know the Columbine kids were on psychotropic drugs. I know there's been a ton of school shooters.
Like prescribed? Yes. You're talking about like weed?
No. Prescribed psychotropic drugs. Prescribed psychiatric drugs. And that if you bring that up, you are taking away from this argument they want to say where they want to blame everything on the guns. It's all about gun control, and we need more gun control. Like, the gun is a tool. There's more guns in this country than there are human beings, okay?
I made this argument at the debate. The idea that you can gun regulate your way out of this problem is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
We have so many firearms in the United States of America that even if I bought into the gun control argument, you're never going to be able to get sufficient guns off the streets.
Right.
So it's ridiculous. So we have to actually go after some of the root causes here. It also ignores, like Finland, for example, has a lot of guns. Does not have nearly the same problem with these mass shooters that we do.